A controversial, as I mentioned, finish to gather round. It was Willie Rioli and the Instagram now deleted post that sparked more fuel on the fire. Tom Morris from 9 News is here to give us the absolute latest. Tom.
Yeah, evening to you, Sam. Evening, guys. This all started last night. Let's take you through chronologically when Willie Rioli held the ball up to Changwath Giath as he was running in to an open goal. And it was this vision that was then replayed on the AFL social media channels overnight on Instagram. Willie Rioli then commented on that and posted a story which was inflammatory and has meant that Port Adelaide Football Club has been scrambling all day. And in that, he said this, play with fire, you're going to get burned. My hatred for this club goes way past last year's antics. What they did to Dad and my brother is why I can't stand them, not the players, with a hashtag that followed. So that was that, and then he deleted that post, Willie Rioli. And what's followed since has been a really difficult day for Port Adelaide Football Club as they've tried to get a handle on all this. There are 3 reasons why Willie Rioli posted that overnight. The first, as he mentioned, is the way that he perceived his dad was treated at the Hawks in 1990 after he was drafted. He didn't play a game. He was there for a matter of months and then he left to the waffle. The second reason, as he mentioned again, is the way that he perceived Cyril Rioli was treated at the club, the 4-time premiership star. And the third reason, my understanding, is due to Jason Dunstall and what the Hawthorn great said at the AFL Hall of Fame night last year.
In 14 years of the club, I only ever beat 2 people in any form of endurance. One was halfway through the tenure. I remember we had a young man come down from the top end by the name of Willie Rioli. I don't think Willie had done a lot of conditioning. He looked like an 18-gallon keg with legs. I looked up with a lap to go and I got the shock of my life. I could actually see someone. And he wasn't that far in front. And I got the scent of my first kill. And it was invigorating, let me tell you. When you've never, ever beaten anyone, it was invigorating. That last 200 was neck and neck. I put my neck out on the line and I got him. And a week later, he was back in the top end. Poor old Willie. Unfortunately.
So that was Jason Dunstall last year, and nobody suggested that Jason Dunstall meant any harm by this, but nevertheless, that's the way Willie Rioli took it, given that his father has passed away in recent years and was at the club with Jason Dunstall, albeit briefly. Now, Port Adelaide released this statement tonight, which in many respects defended Willie Rioli, but also criticised him. Willie Rioli and his family continue to carry deep-seated pain and sadness from past family experiences. Despite the depth of feeling Willie and his family have, social media was not the appropriate forum for Willie to share his emotions last night. Willie understands this. Willie's welfare remains our priority and the club will continue to provide support for Willie and his family through this time. So, Sam, that's where it's at right now, all from the very start when Willie Rioli ran into an open goal in front of Changwath Giath to now. What do you make of all that, Sam?
I mean, it's all... I've obviously read the Port Adelaide statement and I've had a relationship with Willie for a long period of time. We obviously worked together over in the West and we've been in regular contact since then. And I hope that we can have a conversation about this at a more appropriate time. And if we do, that'll remain private. But I'm not sure about all the detail around it. We haven't heard from Willie himself at this stage.
You don't feel like you need to say anything or be in contact with him today or in the near future?
To me, if I was to get in contact with him, I don't think this would be the place that I would say so. So whether I do or don't, it's not a public. That would not be a public forum. That would be something I would do privately. Okay,
thank you, Tom. Appreciate your efforts on Footy Classified and 9 News as always. A difficult 24 hours. You said after the game that you probably needed a bit of time to let it wash over you. What kind of answers have you arrived at in the 24 hours?
Sometimes as a coach, you watch the vision and it makes you feel much better, and sometimes it makes you feel much worse. Fortunately, I watched a fair bit today and I felt a fair bit better. There was a few answers you could, okay, there's a bit of this going on and a bit of things happening that are very controllable. I think when we look at the evidence, there's the show and what you guys will love to talk about and all the antics about the game, but realistically, we were very focused on once the siren went, and it was 3 goals before we'd barely touched the ball. So we're very much going to be focused on getting the technical, tactical aspects of our game right, and there was plenty there to fix. So we had a pretty comprehensive week on the track to make sure we can right a few of the wrongs.
Your messaging's been fascinating in your press conferences. You've done a lot of winning, obviously, so particularly when you win, but also when you lose. And it struck me last night watching it that there was some similar messages that were last year at 0-5 after you played the Gold Coast Suns.
You're just not going to be able to compete against anyone the way we played tonight, and that's just completely unacceptable way to play, and we should be past games like that. Yeah, the first half of that game was unacceptable and not the way we want to play, not the style and level of gameplay that we try to produce.
So when you go into those sort of press conference and those environments, do you get the sense that you are talking to your players? Because you cut through, particularly after you lose, I think you cut through your messaging as good as any coach in the comp.
It's funny because you go straight from your players to the press conference, and particularly after a loss, you're up first. So you talk to your players and you pretty much run straight from there into your press conference. So one of the things that we've tried to do as a club is bring our fans on the journey with us. And so what you see in the press conferences, for the most part, is what you would have said to the players. So there's obviously some language is a little bit different, maybe some detail about what you talk to with the players that's not going to be in a press conference. But really, what I want the fans to see, what I want Hawthorn people to see, is exactly what the players see, to a level that, and those people have been on the journey with us. And I think, despite it being a pretty hostile environment over at SA, there was a lot of gold there's a lot of brown and gold in the crowd, and I think people have been on the journey with us. And that was a bump in the road, and hopefully it bounce back out of it this week.
Yeah, you mentioned hostile, but there's certainly a lot of excitement and intrigue. And whenever there's a game previously which had the tensions rising, there's always this fascination from fans and media alike of what's the motivation? Is the previous game the motivation? It was fascinating to hear Port Adelaide players, and when they were asked, was the previous game motivation for them on the weekend?
Talk us about the rivalry that's been created this last couple of times you've played. It was very fiery out there. Was that mentioned during the week?
Nah, not really, to be honest. I feel like it gets built up a fair bit externally, and people like talking about it. From our point of view, we didn't start the season the way we wanted, and this was an important game to win.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely use it. I know some of the boys use it. Kenny was a bit fired up, but, I think it's good for us. It gets us up and about for the game, and I think, we can't have a rivalry every week to get us up for a game, but, if we play like that, we'll be all right.
So they clearly drew on that rivalry, Jimmy, and the man at the centre of it, the coach, Ken Hinkley, you know him as well as anyone knows him in football, and the motivational component to his coaching. Can he replicate that type of zest out of last night for another dozen times this year to make a success of this final year?
No doubt he'll try, because he's not coaching next year, so he can probably go to that bag a little bit more often than he usually would, because we've got a coach down the end here, of course, Sam, who could correct me if I'm wrong, but if you go play that card too many weeks, it does start to wear a bit thin. But if Kenny's only got 14 games to go, if he can find some emotional response out of the group week in, week out, whether it's been targeting a player or putting something up on the board, well, why not? Because this is the last time he's got this group.
Are you surprised that Port need that extra motivation?
No, I think like Jimmy said, I think every coach has to have that in their kit bag at some. Some use it more than others. It's not my long game at all. But I know that Ken, the players love him. They always speak highly of him, and they speak highly of the motivation that he does in that way and that he's done in the past. And I think Horn Francis said that it helps us play like that. And they played fantastic footy, particularly in the first half of that game. So if they can produce that, they're going to be pretty hard to beat.
What is your long game? Like, without giving away state secrets, what is it that you think helps you connect with your players and then build up to a game to get the best out of them?
I think having a really clear vision about where you're going, and some of the messaging being so consistent, and you see those two press conferences, it's a little bit embarrassing when you see them and they're so mirrored. But I do like the very consistent messages. We're on the same track, and there's going to be bumps in the road, and we're going to be down, and then there's going to be some rises. When we're 4-0, we don't think we're unbeatable, and when we lose a game like that, that doesn't mean we're not going to win again. So it's a really boring answer. Sorry about that.
Sam, Jack Ginnivan was the actual fire starter for this current rivalry between the two clubs. It happened last year, obviously, but is his form now of more of a concern for you than what he actually was doing in the build-up to these two games?
I think with Jack, he's a fascinating person to have in your organisation just because of how much interest there is in him. He's 22 years old. He's still very young. And when we recruited him, I remember thinking, there's some parts of his game that I loved. His footy IQ and his willingness to work hard. I think they're things that are going to make him a very good long-term player for us. He's in a bit of a dip at the moment, but I certainly have no concerns over his longevity in the game for us. He's going to be back to his best pretty quick.
Port Adelaide, look, obviously you lose Dan Houston, dual All-Australian across half-back, and you want to keep that run and drive. And there's always been question marks about Port Adelaide and Granville and being able to get out of the back half. But moving Connor Rozee, a lot of people have seen him play underage football across half-back, but he was very dynamic against your Hawks, Sam, there. So the question for Ken and the Port Adelaide coaching staff, is this a permanent solution for Dan Houston? Now, if it is, don't expect him just to always play high, because if he's a permanent solution at half-back, teams will start dragging him back to the goal square, and then maybe you might have to release him on the midfield. But off the basis of that form, high-quality player, got him involved, he stayed in the game, but hitting the scoreboard as well, he was certainly dynamic.
And you and Jimmy are actually going to head over to the Plasma a little later in the show and unpack some vision. We're going to see Sam Mitchell, the coach, on Footy Classified.
Yeah, that'll be great fun.
Don't sound too excited. Let's move over to the Demons, who are not having much fun at all. It must be said, at 0-5. They play the Fremantle Dockers in the early Saturday game at the MCG, searching for their first win. And Simon Goodwin is still searching for answers, but has the confidence that he is the right man.
I'm incredibly confident, John. It's not about me. It's about the club, it's about the team, it's about these players. And I said this during the week, we've had a lot of challenges through my time at the footy club. And, I've been pretty well serviced to see the club through that.
So there's words coming out of the mouth and there's words coming off the computer screens here with another letter from Brad Green, the Melbourne interim president, to members today. He's endorsing what Simon Goodwin is saying. He's reinforcing that trust, respect, unity and excellence. It's guided us through difficult periods before. We'll rely on them again to return as a club where you'll feel proud to belong. And off the field, and this is interesting, our search for a new CEO is nearing its conclusion. We're looking for someone who truly fits our long-term vision, and we look forward to sharing more news with you shortly. That time frame that they put on it was the same time frame they had on it about 6 weeks ago, so they clearly haven't been able to properly identify the person they want to take them forward. And this happens at a time when Brad Green himself, is in interim capacity as chair, and the desired new permanent chair is also going to be taking off overseas for the most of the back half of the year.
How can the search for a CEO take this long?
Good question. Maybe they haven't found the right person. I know that's an oversimplistic answer, but I don't know what they're looking for. So it's a bit hard for me to comment. What are they? Are they looking for someone to drive the football department? Are they looking for someone who's financially strong? So it's difficult for me to answer that, because I don't know what the brief would be going out to market to find their CEO.
Can I ask, as a coach, how helpful it is having stability above you? And how, imagine you being in someone like Simon Goodwin's position at the moment. You're 0-5, you're searching for answers. You've got an interim CEO and you're in the middle of a presidential handover. So, we in the media would say, oh, that's a huge distraction. Is that the reality?
Oh, I don't think for the players it would be. I think the day-to-day of the playing group, they're going through a bit of a transition with their list and game style and all those things. And I think they've got slightly better each week. I don't think we've seen anywhere near the best of Melbourne, so I wouldn't be writing them off at this stage at all. But the thing I think it's really well done by the president coming out and having something. I think you guys are saying, oh, he said the same thing a month ago. Well, at least he's speaking. Quite often you're looking for information from the club, but you've got two sources from the two standings. So I think that part of it, you've got to tip your lid and say they're doing that part well.
And someone else speaking, Sam, is someone you spoke to today on the Age Football podcast, Libby Birch, a former player for the AFLW team at Melbourne. And Premiership player times 3, once at Melbourne. And these are really strong views she's relayed today.
We've seen the instability that the club has at that level, but it's everyone, and it's potentially, it falls to the top, Gary Pert. We felt somewhat upset because all these things kept taking away from what we were doing as a program and how amazing Melbourne's women's team was at the time. And we genuinely were upset that this off-field stuff was taking all the noise away from a side that was just about to win their first premiership.
So she always speaks very eloquently, I found, Libby, but being in that room today, Damo, you could feel the passion as well involved in that. So I think she's referring to 2021 and onwards. So that after they win the flag and there's murmurs of, off-field poor behaviour. And I think what Libby was getting at is that this stuff has built up. It is accumulated, and now the Demons find themselves where they are
Yeah,
today.
and look, again, people can say that she hasn't been there for some time, and I get that. But when you say there's a build-up, Sam, I mean, we reported on this show regularly in the exchange period leading into last year that there was still some disharmony there, and the culture and behaviour were odd, had issues for players who are on long-term deals who wanted to get out last year and will, we believe, seek to do so again this year.
And let's just remember, this wasn't the plan. This is a club that won in 2021. One of their great players, Jared Healy, talked about it, being the start of potentially something special. This is the end of 2021. So a couple of weeks after they've won the flag, a letter from Gary Pert, the then CEO. They're talking about, look at those numbers. They want 75,000 members. 50,000 people average home games at the MCG. They want to be involved in big blockbuster games, not just to fans, but big TV ratings in prime time. This will be a club that cannot be ignored. Now, of course, it's easy to go back and say, well, they haven't achieved this. But, we talked about on this show, Brendan Gale, how many times that, he talked about wanting 3 flags and 100,000 members. Richmond went and did this. Melbourne have gone and done the opposite. They didn't reach the 75,000 members at the end of last year. They had 65. And look at those average home attendances. These are things, he says that they're a club that can't be ignored. They're being ignored right now. So these are the things they need to fix. They need to fix their administration, their executive, their off-field.
They're in limbo on so many fronts.
Yeah.
And until they get those 2 key posts sorted out, they can. There's no point even talking about what happens beyond that. And with the coach, who is clearly struggling in a win-loss sense. And Sam, you mentioned the crowds. They've got another dodgy one this week, Easter Saturday, which is not traditionally a big drawing day, to be coming up against the Doctors.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's going to be a huge crowd at the MCG. There wasn't a huge crowd watching Noah Balta as he played in a VFL game, essentially a scratch match against an Australian under-18 side. They've put themselves in this position week on week now, the Richmond Football Club. We started the conversation 7 days ago. He didn't ultimately end up playing, of course, at AFL level. And the coach, Adam Uze, and the chief executive of the AFL, Andrew Dillon, had their says across the weekend.
He's been through a lot, so we're keen to get him in because he wants to earn the respect back of his teammates, his club, and our supporters. So to do that, he wants to get out on the field.
We went through a process which was done at the time, and I think we were where it landed. As I said, we don't condone what Noah did. He's learned a lesson, and he'll continue with those behavioural frameworks.
I've spoken again to the AFL today, Sam, and they are not changing their position of last week, and that is this will be a decision for the Richmond Footy Club to make, and that they balked at electing him in the senior team last week, but he does have the option this week, and as we know, the timing on that is interesting because of the Corowa local court finding, which will happen after the next round of home and away, from a timing perspective, where he has pleaded guilty to serious assault charges.
Have you thought to yourself, or I'll put it to you as a hypothetical, you're coaching a side and one of your players goes through what Noah Balta is going through, you have the option to pick him. Is it your choice? Would you play him? Do you go up to the CEO? Do you ask the board? Do you ask your leaders?
I think the first thing is we have a very small amount of information that would be available to them. So they would obviously know Noah. They would have a lot more information about the court proceedings, the legal ramifications, also the impact of him and the people around him within that club. So to speak, I think they would have garnered all of that information and been able to go through it with a fine-tooth comb to figure out their best protocol forward. And I like the AFL saying we trust the club to make good decisions, and Richmond are the ones who are going to make the best decision with all stakeholders in mind.
It was interesting watching it play out over the weekend. So Richmond called it, I think Tim Livingston, the head of football, his statement in the last few days, it was purely a football decision that he didn't get picked at senior level. And I take that on face value. But if their aim was to ignore public attention, I think the opposite happened. This is Noah Balta walking into that, essentially what was a scratch match against an under-18 side. And it looked very similar to him walking out of court a couple of weeks earlier. So whatever Richmond were trying to avoid, I think ended up backfiring.
Yeah.
And I think, your passion at this desk 7 days ago talked to the significance and the gravity of what had happened.
Yeah, and coming off the back of Sam Mitchell's thoughts, and not yours, Sam, is the fact that I don't have all the information, but where I think they got it wrong was they were incredibly tone deaf with their messaging. So they could have been a lot sharper and a lot more aware. And what can happen sometimes in football clubs is you can create an echo chamber. So you sit all around in a table and you all say the same thing and you think, oh, that's the way the world's working. It would have been beneficial for Richmond actually to get someone from outside and go, hey, can I just have a listen to what you're saying? And you can still support Noah Balta. And I don't have any problem with Richmond supporting Noah Balta and the fans. But the messaging, for me, just personally, it's an opinion, was completely wrong and not in lockstep with community values.
And Sam, I'm not raising this to defend Richmond or the AFL, but they were neatly aligned in their strategy, at least by way of their planning, to have the date in their own calendars to line up with the Corowa local court finding. And as we know, they've pushed that date back 2 weeks. I'm only just raising this. This is why we've got to this stage. You know what my views on it too? They're the same as Jimmy.
But that's a bit of the issue. They anchored their position. Yeah. They could have been more nimble and flexible if you sat around and gone, hang on, the goalposts are moved. We don't have to hold our position.
What were the 2 words that Gillon McLachlan kept using during COVID?
Agile.
Flexible and agile?
Yeah. I think the easiest thing to do is to leave him out of the senior team again 1 more week and then see what the court does.
OK, 1 segment down. Are you ready for segment 2?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You better be, because Sam's Oscar Allen meeting a seismic event, or was it a storm in a teacup? We'll tell you next. The Roos, they took another backward step. Is Clarko making too many excuses? And danger signs as Bailey Smith fires up over comments directed at his captain. Footy Classified with Sam Mitchell continues next. Yes, welcome back to Footy Classified. It has been quite the 10 days since the man to my left, Sam Mitchell, was caught red-handed talking to Oscar Allen.
Was it?
Red-handed. What have you made of the reaction?
It's interesting. I mean, I listened to Chris Scott's comments. I thought he was spot on. You can talk to everyone else's players, but no one can talk to yours. That's the general feel. And then James Sicily says that he would talk. I'm like, oh, sis. So, I mean, I think it's a part of the game. You know, there's free agents. There's movement is more regular now, and particularly if you're moving, or potentially thinking about moving states. Like clubs is a big deal, but states is very, very big. So, you know, you're going to have to get as much information as you can. And they happen regularly that you guys don't know about. And quite often the players still stay. So it doesn't mean they're leaving just because they're meeting with other people.
So, Sam, when did Oscar come on the radar as a serious potential candidate for the Hawks? Because a lot of conversation was around he wasn't happy with the initial offer. Did you, like everybody else, hear this? Of course, you would have heard it before it made the papers and think, hang on, this is a bit further down the path, or we should push the boat out a bit further with our attempt to get Oscar across?
Well, we have a list management committee, a group. We have every player on every AFL list, and you go, OK, here are all the greens of all the players we think would help us. Here are all the oranges. Maybe you don't know enough about them. Here's all the reds. Probably not for us. There's over 100 names coming out green, and there's a dossier on each player, on every player, about whether they're interested, when their contract's up, who their management group is, and then that's sort of Jared Ruffhead's job and the rest of the list management. They go and ask questions of all of the greens. You know, here's all the players we might be interested in. Who? Oh, that one's probably not going to go anywhere. Oh, this one maybe we keep following. And
so when did he go from a green to like a triple green that I'm getting on a plane and getting caught red-handed, as Sam called it?
I don't think it was red-handed. I've heard about 12 stories about how we met.
What was the story?
Well, I'm not going to tell you the real story.
Look, can you clear up some inaccuracies? If there are some inaccuracies, and
well, there was no public gathering.
Okay, well, was that his house?
Well, it's not. I don't need to get into.
And
the
did you
details.
have pizzas?
I'm not getting into any details about that. It was definitely not.
You're
in
not
public.
denying that.
We had some time off. My wife and I, we used to live in Perth. She's got some work that she does in Perth, so we went over for a couple of days. And part of it was to do a little bit of recruiting, but we were there to see some friends and do some other things as well.
Do you regret now? Is there any aspect of this do you regret? And do you feel sorry for what Oscar Allen then went through once it gets out?
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly regret the public narrative and the public nature of it. And the fact that it blew up into what James called the storm in a teacup, because these things happen. These things happen fairly regularly. And the fact that it all came at once on one player felt a little bit unfair on him, and I was disappointed for him that happened and that I was a part of that.
Okay, so you've got your 100 green names on the whiteboard, but then it gets whittled down, and I'm not sure every coach does what you do, and you put a really personal touch on meeting them. You wheel out your secret weapon, your beautiful wife Lyndall. And this is part of the narrative. And Lyndall helps get players and their partners across the line. Is that inaccurate?
Is that what Lloyd said? Is it?
Lloyd
Meek? We need to have a word with Lloyd. I think the thing about... So, I mean, Lloyd is an interesting example because he moved with Elle from Perth to Melbourne. And if you're going to do that, that's a big move. But if you use Tom Barras as an example, he's moving a wife, or was fiancée at the time, and 2 boys, and they're committing their lives to you for the rest of their football career. but they're committing their whole family to living in a new state. So where do you do these meetings? Pretty often you need to do them in a private place, as we've worked out. And quite often it's at my house. And Lyndall's not part of the... She's got her own life. She's working, she's doing her own thing. But if people are coming, if you get an agent and a player around to your house and she might wander in, and sometimes she says something, I'm like, that's not how you, keep that one away. But she'll be just having a chat and being a part of the conversation. But the fact that people think she's been a positive influence doesn't surprise me. I did marry her, so she's my favourite person. But it's certainly not part of the plan. We re-roll her out like that.
Your club's strategy to then put your own captain up, James Sicily, to address it really openly, and I think he was really descriptive in the situation. That seemed a little bit out of the normal from a strategy perspective.
Well, I would say, and you can check the stats on this, he was doing that press conference prior to any of the stories. So we were heading out, and you would have seen the background of his... normally in press conferences, they don't wear a hoodie if it's really well prepared, but we were out at KCC, looking to move there later this year. Super exciting environment for us to be going to. And so he was there promoting that. And of course, you guys cut all of those parts of the grabs out, and you just get the part that you want. But
so it's all a big coincidence, really. Lyndall being there's a coincidence. Sam doing the press conference, it's a coincidence.
Will Oscar Allen be at the Hawks next year?
Oh, it's too early. It's too early to say. And if I knew one way or the other, it wouldn't be my place to say it on a public forum.
But you talked about earlier in the show about taking the fans on the journey with you. Do you feel like you're achieving that? Like you're so open about how aggressive you want to be in making this footy club as good as it can be, as quickly as it can be. Like it's. I know you said you were disappointed in the narrative that got created, but isn't it a great thing that Hawthorn fans are out there saying, "Geez, we're going after Oscar Allen. We're interested in this player, in Zach Butters, in Harley Reid. Like we're trying to get better."
Yeah.
I threw the last one in.
Yeah, I mean we're interested in players that can make us better, but every single coach that sits here is trying to improve their list. Yep. It's just a fact. And so how they do that isn't just through the draft, it's through free agency, it's through trades of contracted players. So every single coach is trying to improve their list. Now this one became public through no will of mine. It doesn't suit our narrative at all to have it in a public forum. So I'm disappointed that we have to have the conversation like this, but every coach is doing this.
Speaking of the Eagles and Oscar Allen, they'd want to improve their on-field performance because it was historically bad, and this is one of their boom recruits, Liam Baker, talking about the record lowest contested ball count in AFL history. Well, since they've been counting these numbers, of course, of only 77. It's pathetic, really. It's a tough transition period, but we just need to stick with what we are trying to do. So it's a lot of work for Andrew McQualter. I feel for him. He's trying to work out his list on the run. He's trying to bed down a game plan, and they're in a world of hurt as far as the transition they're going through. And you just wonder, he must think there's 40 things I've got to fix, but he can't fix them all at the moment. But contested ball is one big one in particular.
The North Melbourne Footy Club have a fair bit to fix in the short term if they can dig themselves out of this little hole. We know that there was a lot of positivity after that 10-goal win against the Demons, but since then it has been a series of fourth quarter fade-outs, I should say, and Harry Sheasel, one of their stars, spoke to that today.
Yeah, once they just lifted the level, we just couldn't match it with them, which was disappointing, and it's kind of a theme at the moment that we just can't sustain it for 4 quarters, so we'll keep going to work at that and hopefully can put out a 4-quarter effort this weekend.
Yeah, so from the young gun player to the coach who, as part of his debrief for the media post the Gold Coast fade-out, was starting to make some excuses.
It is difficult. Schedule games in this climate at this time of the day. It just doesn't make sense to me. They did it with a game a couple of weeks ago as well. You got plenty of opportunity to schedule games at a time that makes it more conducive. But having said that, both teams had to play in it.
Now, Jimmy, when he was coaching premierships at Hawthorn, he was never worried about the weather. He was prepared to take his shirt off in a game that was getting ready to be played in near freezing temperatures. So I think he's out of answers.
I think that's the little nibble down to fine league. That was a deflection 101. You take all the conversation off the table about the on-field performance and you just say, look over here while this is going on over here.
That may have been deflection. This wasn't.
The very questions that you're asking of us right now, you've been asking of Gold Coast for the last 6 or 8 years. So we just know that it just takes time. Brisbane took 6 or 8 years and somewhere through that process they just develop the belief. They get their guys like McCluggage and Bailey and these types of guys in 60, 80 games, 100 games, and then they become really, really good players.
Well, it's effectively down that 6-year path for North already. 3 years of Alistair Clarkson, 2 of David Noble and 1 of Reece Shaw. And just have a look at the names on the list that they've had access to within that period of time frame, roughly speaking. Obviously, we'd go back to Jai Simpkin a lot prior to that, but he's a senior player, as is Davies Uniacke, who was signed for 7 years last year. There's not much that they've wanted for when it comes to access to high-end talent. They haven't been able to keep all of those players, but there's access there, which I really feel should be better reflected in where they are on the ladder at this point.
It's an embarrassment of riches when you put it out like that. There'd be so many teams out there, Jimmy, who have been trying to come up the ladder, who would have loved access to high-end draft picks like that.
Yeah, but it's just not draft picks. You've got to have development bedded down. It's got to be first class. So, maybe assess where that's been, have a deep dive of that.
But I think when North fans hear Clarko talk about it takes time, I'm sure there's a level of frustration associated with that.
I get that from North fans and probably people in the broader football industry, but what are we expecting to happen this year? So for me, that's why I'm just looking at the percentage. I keep backing over this because that's what the Lions did under Fagan. It's a reflection of how you're going both sides of the footy. All right, they're playing 3 good quarters. Well, they've got to, in the next few weeks, turn that into 4 quarters. So it's baby steps at the moment.
Another high-end draft pick is, of course, Matt Rowell. The Gold Coast Suns are confident of getting a 2-year contract extension for him. But if he hadn't already in recent weeks, Sam, this young man has announced himself again as one of the premier players in the comp, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's fascinating the way he came onto the scene, and he was best on ground in his first handful of games, and then he, maybe a little bit quieter and got a couple of injuries, and now he's absolutely back to his explosive best, and I think he's green on everyone's board.
Yeah. What's
well, I mean,
on Hawthorn's board?
Well, no, I'm not talking about him specifically, but he's a player who is young, vibrant. He's only going to improve his career, and he's a great cultural fit for anyone. So I mean, I think it seems likely that he's going to stay there. They're confident, but he's a great pickup.
What jumps out at me is look at his body shape change. That's clearly a guy who's in tune with where he needs to improve footy.
Shredded down.
Yeah, well, he does look leaner than when he first come into the game. He looks dynamic. That's probably why he's got the step out of the contest more so than when he first started. But yeah, you remember the images when he wasn't playing. The notebook was out. He was standing next to coaches. As a guy who's just seeking constant improvement.
Studious.
Very diligent.
Very sharp. He's Matt Rowell. Speaking of sharp, the water cooler is next. We're going to tell you what everyone needs to be talking about and is talking about, especially AFL coaches, plus the Lions' sluggish starts, the Dogs' missing pieces, good call, bad call, Sam and Jimmy at the Plasma, and a whole lot more on Footy Classified.
I've never seen a coaching group more disenfranchised with the way they're treated as a whole. The AFL have clearly said what their priorities are, and coaching and football departments are low on that priority list. I talked to the Players Association about pathways for players into coaching, and their feedback is no, the players don't want to do it.
The soft cap it's reached its boiling point in terms of our staff. There's a lot of loud voices. There's a lot of yelling going, what's going on?
There's an AFL Coach Association. I think they're really good people, but we're a paper tiger, right? We've got no muscle, have we? Otherwise, if we had muscle, do you reckon we'd be 1.5 down in the soft cap? I wouldn't have thought so.
I don't want them as a collective, our coaching panels and staff, to feel that way. My team will work really hard to make sure that perception changes. And if it's a reality, it's one I don't want.
Welcome back to Footy Classified. A fair share of AFL senior coaches there not happy with the treatment, part thereof financially, of how things are playing out in the fraternity. Is that fair, unfair, Sam? Do you share some of the thoughts and concerns of the men that you just watched?
Oh, I certainly do. They said it perhaps a bit more in a funnier ways than I probably will. But, I mean, the thing I look at is I think the AFL needs to create the best people going into AFL clubs. And so coaches, we've got the voice, so we talk about coaches a lot. And I would love to see Bartel and Hodge and Selwood coaching, because I want those minds coaching. But also we need the best physios and the best doctors and the best strength and conditioning stuff. You want to be able to draw the best people to clubland. And if you can do that, then you get the best product. It's down the road, the product. But I think at the moment we're losing a lot of talent to other codes, to other professions, because the soft cap hasn't grown in comparison to the rest of it.
Just quickly, if they were to return the number to pre-COVID, would that be increase everyone's salary, or is it head count in your football department?
So I think we're about back now to just around the pre-COVID period now. So we went right down, and now we've sort of gone up at
staff-wise. You mean staff numbers?
Staffing-wise, yeah, we've gone up at about inflation. Everyone else the game has blossomed and grown into this huge juggernaut that we see gather around. And the football departments just haven't grown anywhere near the same speed. And with what's happening in the game and the growth of the game now, I think there's enough people saying this is time to get some best people back into this by creating a workforce that's best in class.
A fair few words were being thrown your way during that game last night at Adelaide Oval, and there were a bit going on between Adelaide fan and the Geelong players back on Thursday night. We'll just recap what Bailey Smith, Paddy Dangerfield and Andrew Dillon had to say about Bailey Smith's double bird to that crowd infringer.
There's only so much you can cop when they start saying sort of personal slurs to Danger, our captain and stuff, and if I had my time again, definitely would. It's not a good look for the game as well, so I understand that. So I've got to be better in that regard, but it's all part of it. You know what I mean? You dish it out, you get it back.
Oh, I don't know if it was a Crows fan or whatever, but there's some things that just shouldn't be yelled across the fence. I think passion is great, but there's a line as well, and don't know. I didn't mind Baz sticking up for me.
The fans have been incredible. The vibe's been amazing. So what I don't want is it to be ruined by one idiot. But we've got a record of, if there is isolated behavioural incidents, we'll look into them and deal with them.
So that was Thursday night. Sunday night, Sam, you were subjected to a fair bit going on and off the field. What happened?
I'm only just ready to have a little chuckle about this, but I was walking down three-quarter time and we were clearly up against it at that period, and someone gave me a fair bit of sledging and heckling, and I didn't realise it, but as I got down, they kicked him out. And by the time I walked back up to start the third quarter, I had the whole bay chanting "dibba dobber" to me, and I hadn't heard the phrase "dibba dobber" for a long period of time. And that was I was getting a splinter out of my daughter's foot with the tweezers today, and she's saying, "I can't believe you said "dibba dobber, Dad. That's unbelievable."
I never picked you as a dibba dobber.
Yeah, well,
of all the coaches,
this whole bay just called me a dibba dobber. It was cool. I didn't laugh at the time. I had other things on my mind, but I woke up this morning having a chuckle.
I think we're all having a chuckle listening to that. But next, Sam, you're over to the plasma. I hope you're ready to stand next to Jimmy, because he can be quite intimidating. Jimmy Bartel and Sam go to the plasma next, plus good call, bad call, a different version of the cook, and a whole lot more. You're watching Footy Classified. Welcome back to Footy Classified. Well, we're used to the sledgehammer and Matthew Lloyd taking charge at the plasma. Things look a little different tonight. Jimmy, you've got a special guest.
Yes, Lloydie's on bin night, so we've brought in the Hawthorn coach here. Fantastic opportunity here to pick your brain, Sam. Bit of Monday review sort of stuff. Forward 50 stoppages tend to pull coaches' hair out and getting scored against. So we've got one of the first goals here. We're going to walk through it. We've got Joe Richards highlighted up here as we pause the vision. If you go through your Hawks boys, what would you rather see in this situation here?
Well, I think the players who are watching this, we haven't had our review yet, and they're going to be like, oh, great, this is exactly what we're going to be covering. So we talk sometimes about goalkeepers, and one goalkeeper. Soccer teams have one goalkeeper, but we have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. So all of those guys are not doing anything. So can they be a bit more defensive and press the ground a little bit more to try and stop goals? This has been a problem for us, which Jimmy's picked out, which is not ideal for me.
So I've got you another example just to show the boys again on Monday. So tomorrow, we've got Willem Drew at the back here. You mentioned the goalkeeping, but can you touch on a bit of this, how opposition can pull your forward structure apart, even though you're in the defensive 50? Yeah,
so we really struggled to get it out of our defence, and you can see we're loaded up behind the ball here, which makes it really hard for guys like Marbior. He's competing against one, but he's also, when he looks up, he's got 1, 2, 3, probably 4, and even 5 Port Adelaide players right in front of him. So any kick that comes out, he's going to be really difficult to be able to hold it outside, and that's what we really had trouble in this game.
Just before, or as that rolls on, so you'd prefer the communication from the last one at the back, as we see, just pause it here. We've got Ward, who just gets stuck under the footy. What would you prefer here from your Hawks boys? Because you've got pretty good matchups here, arm across.
Well, I think, Jimmy, I've just had 2, and we've had trouble with this for most of the year, and I'm sick of coaching you. Maybe you can help me.
All right. So
what do you think we should be doing?
Well, I think this matchup here has caused you a little bit of a problem. Ward just gets drawn under the footy. Probably in future he needs to probably just come back as the ruckman come towards him, but that's no massive error. But with the ball being so close, this has to be some physical contact here, because you look Burgoyne, free run. You never make up that distance, and it turns into a pretty easy goal. We got here one of the opening plays in the game. A bit of communication here. How in the first, we got 40 seconds, we're finding Joe Richards with a lot of space inside forward 50.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of failures. This was the very first play of the game, basically. Went to our end and went straight down, almost uncontested. And you can see a little bit of lack of communication. So these guys are obviously very tight in their one-on-one matchups, but very much looking after their own backyard and haven't opened their eyes and figured out where else they might be able to help, because this breakdown, it could have been fixed by any one of the guys from here. So it probably showed why it was 3 goals to... We basically hadn't had a possession by the time they put 3 on the board, and this was their first.
And is this the sort of stuff you're trying to address at quarter time? We see another one here. This matchup's probably fine. We see James Sicily probably directing Tom Barrass to roll up. Again, you wanted 1 goalkeeper. But is this been structured up well for you guys, or just sometimes the opposition's too good?
Well, I mean, this is a pretty classy finish, isn't it? But ideally, you would love to get more pressure on the ball. I think if you had every coach up here and they could ask for one thing, it'd be pressure. And so if you look at the common theme out of all of these, there's just not enough pressure on the ball carrier. And if you give classy players, Palpepa, you give Willie Rioli time with the ball, they're going to make good decisions and make you pay.
Easter Monday, the traditional classic between Geelong and Hawthorn. This man here, Patrick Dangerfield, might be a good player when he grows up. We often talk about team defence versus the one-on-one hard matchup. So how do you plan for a guy like this when everyone likes to play team defence?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with players like Danger is you have to treat them a little bit differently to everyone else. You know, you might have your team structure, but you know whoever's on Dangerfield, that matchup might override some other things. I know we talked off air a little bit about Cameron Ling and how he was just so diligent in his role and everyone else understood it. And I think, unfortunately, with the Cats, it's not just Danger. It was him on this occasion. But, you know, if you leave Jeremy Cameron with too much space, or Brian Myers, or close, then you're going to be in some trouble as well.
Well, it looks like you've got the morning off tomorrow. You've already done the team review. Sam, how good is that, having the coach of the Hawks with us?
Unbelievable insight. Thank you so much, Sam. The review before the review. I hope Hawks players were staying up and taking notes. Good call, bad calls next on Footy Classified. Welcome back. Well, we thought with a new panel member he might get the new ball, but once again Jimmy Bartel has demanded it. So, Jimmy, we may have seen the last of one of the game's greats. Good call, bad call. Before you answer it, Justin Longmuir after the game on the weekend.
Yeah, I hope he realises it's a long season and there's still plenty of footy left. He's really confident with where his game was trending, how his body was trending. Get it scanned and let you know. But yeah, our first thought is that it's not overly serious.
Hopefully that's a bad call. I want to see Nat Fyfe. I know he's not going to be Nat Fyfe at his absolute pomp, but I want to see another big flying contested mark, knocking over a goal, because we want to remember Nat Fyfe as the absolute champion, and he's been for Freo.
And Sam, the coach on the panel is not even the first change bowler. You are. Fox Footy should know better than to lock in a Carlton win. Good call, bad call.
No, that's a good call from you. Astute call. Can I get next week's Tats Lotto numbers call? Unbelievable on the weekend. Fox knew, bottom right-hand corner, Carlton were going to win before West Coast did. 1-4 down the bottom, West Coast 0-5. Predictor working well at Fox.
Not sure about that one. So, Damo, never has Collingwood's stay-at-home advantage been more obvious than right now. Good call, bad call.
That's an excellent call. It's a very astute call. It's a well-researched call. You're referring to Harvey Thomas playing 23 matches only of football and having played at 12 venues alongside Scott Pendlebury. He's been around since 1972 and played 408 games and only played at 11. Good call.
Mitch, I want you to look at this footage. Jack Higgins wasn't the only one playing video games in this gather-round. Good call, bad call. Errol Goulden there on the bench. What do you reckon Errol's up to?
That's good call. I think my kids play that game. I think it's called Fruit Ninja. You've got to swat the fruit. I think that's what that is.
Sam Mitchell would love to have Ned Long running around in the brown and gold right now, Jimmy. Good call, bad call.
Overreactionary call from you, Sam. Typical from you. He's got an absolute stacked midfield. Injury goes out. Of course, Will Day, we'd love to see him back, but James Warple, we'll see McDonald. They've got Ward, who just comes in. Ned Long, fantastic game. He'll do really well for Collingwood, but I think Sam's right for midfielders.
OK, good call, bad call, all done. The closing cook, a different version, is up next on Footy Classified. No Matthew Lloyd tonight, so I'm stepping up to the plate. Now, the man to my left, Sam Mitchell, is seen as one of the great football minds. We know that tactically he's a great media performer, as sharp as a stiletto, but he wasn't sharp when he was interviewed about whether he was going to meet up with Oscar Allen.
I know you're busy, but is there time in your calendar to jump on a plane to Perth and catch up with Oscar Allen or not?
You've got another wedding, have you? No weddings. No weddings coming up at the moment. But you never know. You never know these things. We obviously lived in Perth with the family for a couple of years, so you never know these things.
I just think that's the one chink in your armour, just a better poker face. You could have easily played that down to fine leg.
So you caught me on the way. So if you were any good at your job, I'd say you probably would pick that up.
I just bowled you a nice little half volley outside off.
I'm not sure you thought it was half volley. I think you thought that was a Yorker on real stump.
And you played it well.
Yeah.
Okay, we're ending awkwardly on Footy Classified. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I know you're busy, particularly after what happened on the weekend, but we really appreciate your time. Tomorrow night on Channel 9 Footy Classified, Eddie and the team, their special guest panellist, Chris Scott. Thanks for joining us on Footy Classified. We'll see you tomorrow.